Welcome to the third part of the lecture. We've seen so far that the question of when to eat is almost as important as the question of what to eat. The fattening effect of food depends not only on the food itself, but it is also significantly influenced by the time of the day the meal is consumed. The term intermittent fasting sounds familiar to most of us. From time to time, we can come across this very popular topic in social media, videos, newspaper articles, and on television. As its name suggests, intermittent fasting is an eating pattern consisting of fasting periods and regular eating days. The typical length of fasting is 24 hours, but depending on the individual, the duration of fasting can be extended to 36 hours or even 48 hours. The longer the fasting day, the more efficiently fat burning goes. In order to prevent muscle loss, longer fasting periods than 2 days are not recommended. On fasting day, no food is allowed, but there is no limit on water and non-caloric fluid intake. It's up to the individual to see how many fasting days they can commit to. It can be as little as just 1 day a week or as many as 7 days a week. The higher the level of commitment, the faster the results. Alternate day fasting involves 24-hour fasting periods followed by a regular eating day. The most common variant of periodic fasting is the 5-2 eating pattern, 5 eating days and 2 fasting days a week. Some authors even allow some limited food intake during fasting. I don't think that would work in the long run. Any caloric intake while fasting interferes with the basic principle of fasting. I would rather call it a calorie-restricted diet, but not fasting. To get a better understanding of how these regimens work, let's take a quick look at the basic physiology of fasting. The fuel metabolism of the human body shows some common features to a flex fuel or hybrid vehicle. It is capable of running on not only one but multiple fuel sources. The main metabolic fuels of our body include glucose, glycogen, fatty acids, and proteins. Although the major metabolic pathways have been studied since the 1930s, the physiological role of ketone bodies was not really understood until the second half of the last century. Dr. George Cahill from Harvard Medical School was one of the most renowned experts in the area of glucose and ketone metabolism and fasting. Based on Cahill's research, there are 5 metabolic stages. This slide demonstrates the 5 phases of glucose homeostasis in a 70 kg man during a 40-day starvation period. In the absorption phase, within 4 to 6 hours after food consumption, typically after a large carbohydrate meal, the entire body oxidizes glucose. Elevated blood glucose levels trigger insulin secretion. Insulin's job is facilitating glucose uptake by the cells of the body. The excess sugars will be converted into glycogen, which is stored in the skeletal muscles and the liver. In the first stage, the whole body is fueled by exogenous glucose. A few hours later, as the glucose supplies are getting gradually depleted, the liver begins to return its stored glycogen in the form of glucose that is released into the bloodstream. This is the second phase called glycogenolysis. The main consumer of the released glucose is the central nervous system. Peripheral tissues, such as muscle and adipose tissue, progressively decrease glucose utilization. After 8 to 10 hours of starvation, over 1/2 of the muscle's energy supplies are met by free fatty acid oxidation. The liver's glycogen reserves maintain an adequate blood glucose level for 12 to 16 hours.